Alright folks, today we're diving into Chapter 4 of Lu Ximian's A General History of China, where he talks about dividing our national history into different periods. In this chapter, Mr. Lu lays out his take on splitting history into 4 big phases: ancient, medieval, early modern, and modern. History is all connected, one thing flowing into the next, like trying to cut water with a knife. It just can't be done. But to get a clear picture of the big changes and trends, historians often break it down into periods, and that's a common trick they use. It's pretty obvious to Lu that Chinese history can be split into a few eras. Before the 3 dynasties Xia, Shang, and Zhou, China was a world of independent states standing side by side, and that should count as the first era. After the Qin dynasty took over and unified everything, we entered an age of centralized rule. From then until the modern era, when we started dealing with Europeans, there were changes in how we governed internally, and some shifts in our borders expanding or shrinking at times, but overall, we kept that old, closed-off, independent vibe. That's the second era. Then came the time of growing contact with Europe, right up to the fall of the Qing and the birth of the Republic. This period was shorter than the first 2, but it was a game-changer, a new stimulus that shook us out of our isolation and pushed us into the world stage with other nations. That deserves its own era, the third one. And since the Republic was founded, it's only been 22 years. Yet, in that short time, we've started fixing up our old ways, adapting to new environments, and bringing a fresh start vibe. All the endless hope for the future is planted here. So this gets its own period, the fourth one, and no question about it. So, in a big picture way, China's history can be divided into 4 periods: ancient, medieval, early modern, and modern. That's the rough breakdown. If we want to get into more detail, each period can be split into smaller stages too. Right at the start of the book, the author clearly lays out these 4 periods and gives a quick rundown of each. He starts by saying that before the 3 dynasties, China was a place of coexisting independent states. Now, some of you might be wondering, wasn't the Xia dynasty the first one? Why talk about independent states before that? Well, if you look at it through archaeology and sociology, forming a state is a slow process. It started with small tribes that grew into bigger tribal groups, then turned into tribal alliances. Those alliances kept developing until we hit the proto-state phase, and finally, full-on states. The independent states he mentions here is that in-between stage between tribal alliances and proper states. If you match it with traditional Chinese history, it lines up with the later part of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors era. Let's add a bit more here. Thanks to archaeological finds from places like the Longshan and Liangzhu cultures, we can see how complex early societies got. They've dug up ritual items, city walls, and big tombs, showing clear signs of social hierarchy and centralized power. Especially in Liangzhu, they found huge water projects and palace ruins, proving those early states had some serious organization and tech skills. These findings match up with the old records of a multi-state setup, showing that before the Xia, China had lots of relatively independent states dotted around. Next, the author brings up the idea of Shiyun, which is all about the rise and fall of dynasties and the ups and downs of history. This concept has deep roots in Chinese scholarship, going back to the Book of Documents and Spring and Autumn Annals, where they talk about the mandate of heaven and historical fate. He also points out that the Republic, starting in 1912, was only 22 years old when he wrote this book in 1934. Exactly 22 years since it began. When he says a new stimulus with G, a halberd, an ancient weapon, not the modern stimulation, he means the new challenges and changes the Republic brought our way. The early years of the Republic were a wild ride. The 1911 revolution toppled the Qing dynasty, ending over 20 years of feudal rule and setting up Asia's first republic. But things didn't settle down. Warlords took over, foreign invaders came knocking, and social chaos followed. When he mentions that new stimulus, he's painting a vivid picture of this messy yet transformative time. After laying out these 4 phases, the author digs into each one with detailed sections. Let's follow his lead and explore each period to get a better grip on how Chinese history evolved and what each era tells us about society, politics, and culture. The Ancient Period. In the early days, figures like Nest, Yukao, Shuiren, Fuxi, and Shennong started showing signs of civilization. These guys, part of the legendary three sovereigns, symbolize the shift from primitive life to organized farming. Then came the Yellow Emperor, who, according to legend, conquered tribes east and west, expanding our territory big time. He's seen as the founding ancestor, and his lineage is well documented. Even though it was still a world of independent states, a central ruler everyone recognized as the common leader started to emerge. That was a big political shift. After the Eastern Zhou, our people branched out in all directions. States with similar strength and virtue popped up, and the Zhou king couldn't call the shots anymore. The power to lead moved to hegemons who took turns hosting alliances. By the warring states, even those alliances fell apart. The lords fought hard, merging until it went from 7 states down to 1. The mixed-in ethnic groups joined this fierce competition. Some were pushed out, others absorbed. The old clan-based society changed big time here, and academic thought took off, shining bright and marking the end of the ancient period. The author sketches the early outline of Chinese civilization with a concise touch. He mentions Nest, Shuiren, Fuxi, Shennong, Nest as Yukao, Shuiren the firemaker, Fuxi, the culture founder with his 8 trigrams and marriage system, and Shennong, the herb taster and farming teacher, seeing them as early signs of progress. These are the 3 sovereigns from the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors legend. Historians debate who exactly the 3 sovereigns were, but the mainstream view pegs them as Shuiren, Fuxi, and Shennong. These mythic figures, though steeped in legend, reflect the move from primitive to agricultural society. He goes on with, since the Yellow Emperor ruled, meaning he took charge of the land. Honored as our ancestor, he unified the Central Plains tribes through battles like Bangquan and Zhuolu, per the records of the Grand Historian. After him, sage kings Yao, Shun, and Yu built early state frameworks. The author uses states of similar strength and virtue to describe the rival lords, showing they were neck and neck in power and moralsa setup that got intense during the spring and autumn and warring states. The term hegemons taking turns leading alliances captures the shaky order, with figures like Duke Huan of Qi, Duke Wen of Jin, and King Zhuang of Chu stepping up, though their dominance never lasted. He also notes pushed out or assimilated, meaning the central civilization both repelled and blended with surrounding groups, shaping the diverse yet unified Chinese culture. On the intellectual front, he highlights the spring and autumn and warring states boom. This was the 100 Schools of Thought era. Confucianism with Confucius pushing benevolence and virtue, Taoism with Laozi and Zhuangzi preaching natural harmony, Mohism with Mozi's universal love, and legalism with Han Fei and Shang Yang's strict laws. This diversity and free debate drove progress and left a rich cultural legacy. There's this famous German philosopher, Jaspers, who came up with the Axial Age concept roughly 800 BCE to 200 BCE, peaking around 600–300 BCE. Along the 30th parallel north, great thinkers popped up. In China, we had Confucius, Laozi, and Zhuangzi pondering virtue. In Greece, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid down Western philosophy with their logic and reasoning, Socrates with his question and answer method, Plato with his ideal state, and Aristotle with his broad studies. In ancient India, the Buddha started Buddhism with the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, spreading to East and Southeast Asia as a major religion. In Persia, Zoroaster founded Zoroastrianism with its good versus evil duality, influencing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Middle East, Jewish prophets wrote the core of the Old Testament, shaping theology with stories of creation and covenants that later spread via Christianity. Jaspers thought these thinkers, despite their different worlds, tackled the same big questions. What's justice? What's a good life? What's the meaning of existence? This synchronicity made the Axial Age a turning point. He also said something famous. A tree shakes another tree. A cloud pushes another cloud. A soul awakens another soul, nailing education's core as mind. Stirring, not just rote learning. Confucius traveled to teach all. Mozi built a tight network, and Zunzi and Mencius wrote and lectured, setting up China's education base. Next, let's move to the medieval period. This is a key bridge in Chinese history, covering Qin to Tang, with cycles of unity and split. It saw deep changes in politics, economy, and culture, helping us grasp China's historical flow and its unique place in a global context. The medieval period. In the medieval period, the Qin and Han dynasties turned outward after unifying the inner lands, leading to Qin Shi Huang and Han Wudi's territorial expansions. Scrapping feudalism flattened the old layered hierarchy, boosting royal power. But with vast lands, governance got looser, people gained more political freedom, and society lost tight control. Competition eased, minds grew calm, and academic thought shifted from division to unity. That's the first phase. The Han expansions brought foreign tribes into the inner lands. When rebellions flared and the central government couldn't handle it, local powers had to step up, leading to warlords and the three kingdoms split by the late Han. The Jin unified briefly, but the Five Barbarians' invasion caused the north-south division, lasting until the Sui reunited it. That's the second phase. The Sui and Tang, after long wars, brought sudden unity, giving people a breather, restoring national strength, and reviving Qin-Han-style military might. That's the third phase. After the mid-Tang, military governors took over, sparking another split. This led to the Song's central pushback, but with a weakened state, foreign invasions by Liao, Jin, and Yuan followed. The Ming briefly recovered, but the Qing, another outsider, took over. That's the fourth phase. When talking medieval history, he gives a solid rundown of Qin and Han. He says their inner land, unity, meaning the Central Plains, the heart of Chinese civilization since ancient time set the stage. Qin, with Shangyang's reforms and military wins, unified China in 221 BCE under Qin Shi Huang, ending the warring state's chaos with standardized writing, tracts, and measures. But its harsh rule sparked rebellion and collapse. Han's Liu Bang beat Shang Yu, founding the Western Han, blending Qin's central control with a gentler rest and recover policy, lower taxes, farming boosts leading to the Han-Tang peak with expansions to Central Asia, Korea, and Vietnam. The banishing the 100 schools, honoring Confucianism, move cemented Confucian dominance, shaping politics and culture long-term. He notes the foreign tribes entering the inner lands within the Great Wall, mainly northern nomads like the Xiongnu and Xianbei. Qin built the wall against the Xiongnu, while Han mixed force, like Wudi's campaigns, with peace treaties and marriages. This eased border pressure but brought some nomads in. By late Eastern Han, with the center weakening, the Five Barbarians' invasion, Xiongnu, Xianbei, Jie, Di, Qiang reshaped demographics and politics. Think Northern Wei's Hanification as a fusion example, paving the way for Sui Tang glory. He mentions people got some relief, post-unity, meaning economic recovery. Qin's heavy rule hurt, but Han's rule of Wen and Jing with light taxes filled granaries. Even with Wudi's wars, the economy held strong, boosted by the Silk Road. The early modern period. This period shapes our present, carrying its legacy. The Qing, though foreign, knew China better than the Mongol Yuan, following Confucian norms and using Chinese systems for peace and prosperity. If the world stayed medieval, kicking out this outsider would have been it. But the closed-door dream ended. Western winds blew in. No more sleeping. After the 1842 Opium War, the Treaty of Nanjing opened 5 ports: Guangzhou, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, Shanghai, and ceded Hong Kong to Britain. Foreign powers dug deep, marking spheres of influence and musing about division, then betting on balance. China, under invasion, hoped their mutual distrust would keep a shaky peace. Economic intrusion hit harder than ever, and ideas shifted wildly, stirring storms inside and out. So, early modern splits into 2. First, Western influence crept in, but we were clueless, keeping old ways. Second, it hit hard, forcing change. The 5-port opening in 1842 is the line between them. This part's written with clear frustration. China's modern humiliations are stuff we all learned growing up. He says we were under invasion, hoping their squabbles would maintain balance for a quick breather. Pretty embarrassing. Hoping here is like wishful thinking. It means we relied on their chaos to hold things steady for a bit. And Western influence crept in, we were unaware, suggests their political, military, and economic power rolled east while we stayed clueless. He highlights the five-port opening as a key Marcaron 1842's Treaty of Nanjing, with Britain forced open Guangzhou, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Ningbo, and Shanghai, and gave away Hong Kong in 3 steps. 1842 for Hong Kong Island, the Central and Causeway Bayside if you visit, 1860 for most of Kowloon south of Boundary Street, like Mongkok and Harbour City, and 1898 for the new territories up to the Shenzhen River, totaling about 100 square kilometers, a huge chunk. The modern period. This is when we reacted to that stimulus still, that Halberd Z idea. Early on, we just chased the shiny idea of a republic, but nothing was fully fixed, leading to 20 years of chaos. The warlord mess. Then Sun Yat-sen set the course with the 3 principles: nationalism, democracy, livelihood, and the 5-power constitution for our fight and governance. Inside, it was about crushing warlords for clean politics. Outside, uniting oppressed nations to ditch unequal treaties. Though the revolution's not done, hope's on the horizon. The nationalist government's start marks a new chapter. This is just the big picture details, with facts come next. Talking modern, that stimulus is still the Halberd jolt. Early revolution just admired the republic's name, but half-baked efforts brought 20 years of warlord turmoil. Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles and 5-power adding exam, and supervision to the European 3, legislative, executive, judicial, were huge. He's a giant of modern China. If you're in Guangdong or passing Zhongshan, once Xiangshan, renamed in 1925, upgraded to a city in 1988. Visit his home in Quihang Villagia, gorgeous spot with a 5A scenic museum, one of Guangdong's 6 top-tier ones. That's it for today, thanks, everyone.